It's a Tuesday night, and we actually now have the final season of Buffy, not the season 5 fake out with the network change. Welcome to another edition of the Sunday Scaries. I'm your host, Mike, and we got another Tuesday terror coming at you as we review the final season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And yes, this is the final season. I know season 5 gave us a little bit of a fake out, but this is where sadly the story ends, or kind of ends, because you also have the 5th season of Angel, which technically takes place after this season. But as far as Buffy goes, this is our last hurrah with her. And the season picks up where we left off last time. Spike now has a soul, which he did for Buffy, and he's back, but now he's being tormented because he actually can feel and repent for all the bad things that he's done. Willow is now in magic recovery. Xander and Anya, they're still broken up, and Anya's in full vengeance demon mode. Giles is working with Willow to recover from magic. And then you got Buffy, who's still just trying to get by with her younger sister. And this season, it does bring back some familiarity from past seasons. Sunnydale High has been rebuilt. Buffy is now actually working as a counselor at the school. She got hired by the new principal, which he's got some mysteriousness to him. And it turns out his mother actually was a vampire slayer and was killed by Spike. And Dawn is now going to school there. And the season starts out with random women, getting murdered, and you don't really know what's going on. Buffy's kind of doing her typical Scooby Gang stuff. And it turns out the whole big bad is actually the first evil. And the first evil somehow has decided to end the Slayer bloodline, and it's looking for potential young girls who could take on the role of Slayer once Buffy and Faith are dead, because remember, Faith is still alive, and Faith's actually been in prison if you watch the Angel series. And anyways, the first evil is trying to kill all of the women who potentially can become Slayers, and they wage war, and it's very intense once it gets going. And Giles actually seeks out the potential Slayers and brings them to Sunnydale, and they all start living with Buffy's. And before you know it, there's a ton of women all in one house living at Buffy's. She's trying to mentor them. They don't have powers yet, and she's trying to keep them alive. And it's just this huge mess. And Andrew actually comes back from the last season, and he murders Jonathan and being tricked by the first evil. And the first evil can come back in the form of anyone that's dead but can't actually touch you. So the first evil is very manipulative, trying to bring this army of very feral and old school vampires that have no humanity. They make Spike look like a kitten, even when Spike is got no soul and no chip in his head. And it's just this big mess of a situation that, again, Buffy needs to work through. And as all these things converge, Buffy's trying to fight this monster that can be anywhere at any time, and even though it can't touch her, it can be very manipulative. The first enlists the help of these horrible vampires, this crazy deranged preacher that's got super strength named Caleb. This evil is trying to mentally wear them down. I mean, this is a very daunting big bad, and I like this one much better than Dark Willow or like Adam from season 4, which I believe are two of the weaker big bads in the series. It's fun having Spike back, and he's a little bit less of himself in the first half of the season because he doesn't have the soul, and he's repenting, and he's actually being manipulated through the first evil, and there's all this weird stuff going on. But it is a nice overall season in that it brings everyone back together. It ties up, for the most part, loose ends. It even brings back Faith for the final few episodes because they need all the Slayer help they can get, and Buffy and her kind of have an amends. And it's this really interesting way to close out the series. I don't know if I like it more than season 5, but I don't hate it. And I do think it was a just way to end the series as a whole. Before we get into themes, I do think the season's a little unique in that I think half of it's really good and half of it is really boring. At times the season can kind of drag on. You have all these potential Slayers. A lot of them don't have that much personality. The ones that you do really like, I don't think get enough screen time. And towards the end, they don't all make it. And a lot of ones that I really like don't make it. So, you have that going on. And then there still is some awkwardness, like, Xander and Anya, they're broken up. It's kind of like the show doesn't know what to do with them, and they're kind of awkwardly still friends, but not, and sort of still into each other, but not. And then you have Willow, who's recovering from, last season and kind of gets recontrol of her magic, but is still a little timid, kind of like a recovering addict type thing. And she starts dating the most annoying potential Slayer, Kennedy, who's just a little self-proclaimed brat and kind of pushes her to date. And the one thing about it, I know I haven't talked a ton about Tara, and I've focused more on Willow's attraction to her and the magic and kind of being a gateway drug. But I do really believe that Willow genuinely loved Tara. And it's hard for me to believe that she just move on so quickly, especially to this little brat who has like no personality. I just don't see it. And, I think the show forced that one. And I know a lot of fans also did not love Kennedy and Willow having this relationship, and I gotta be on the same page there. Stuff like that is just an example of, it's got some really bad lows, but then you have some really cool highs. The feral vampires are fun, and Buffy, she fighting them, it's pretty thrilling at times when she's going toe-to-toe with them. And then you have Caleb, who's just a menacing ex-preacher who's drawn to the first evil. I mean, there's some good villains and there's some good action. I love having Faith back. Faith and Buffy making an amends. I think it's something the show really needed with that closure. And I do think Faith's one of the best characters in the series, even though she's a smaller character. And if you go and watch Angel, which season 4 Angel is batshit crazy. Sorry, I swore, but batshit crazy. But the one sequence I really like in it is Faith helping Angel and all that stuff that happens in that season. When you add that with season 7, Faith gets a really good closure on her character arc. And the first theme you kind of got to tackle in this season is Spike's got a soul now. And this is where the show really comes full circle of, what does having a soul mean? What does not having a soul mean? And Spike kind of gets a pass from Buffy for all the bad things he's ever done because she keeps saying he didn't have a choice. And now that he has a soul, he does. And it's a really interesting concept. There was times when Spike did not have a soul. He chose to do some really good things, but he consistently, once he knew he could do wrong, chose to do wrong. When he figured out he could hurt Buffy, he beat the crap out of her. Again, he tried to sexually assault her. And those are definitely things I don't think he would do with a soul, especially seeing him with a soul in this season. And really, the only bad things he does in this season are when he's being manipulated and doesn't even know it's happening by the first evil, because the first evil is able to unlock this trigger switch to make him kill people due to some trauma that he had from when he actually became a vampire, which is sort of interesting. The theme of forgiveness, segueing into the second theme, is really big in this season. So Spike gets the pass from Buffy, but she also ends up having to forgive Faith. She needs Faith's help. I mean, she needs all the help she can get, and Faith's the only other one with Slayer powers. Even though you have all these potentials, they're still just as weak as you or I. They have no powers at that point. They kind of have a coming together moment, and she jokes that, the two of them aren't really supposed to exist at the same time. And it's ironic because how they kind of figure out how to defeat the first evil is they unlock the powers of all the potential Slayers. So you have an army of Slayers now. Faith and Buffy learning to forgive each other is really big. And don't forget, Faith did sleep with Buffy's boyfriend and he didn't know it in season 4, back to Riley's. So Buffy had a lot to overcome to forgive Faith on a lot of different levels. And then additionally, everyone had to forgive Willow at the beginning of the season after she almost destroyed the whole world. Giles and Buffy have some issues and they have to forgive each other during this season. You also have Spike and the new principal. Spike killed his mother and he has to get over it. Of course, it's kind of forced given that he tries to kill Spike and it doesn't go quite his way. But I really do just love the themes of forgiveness in this season. I think they're excellent. The third theme, circling back to a previous one that I've talked about, is use. I still do think that despite Buffy forgiving Spike, she's still using him in this season. She clearly doesn't love him. He does bring a lot to the table in the terms of he's a good warrior and everything, but he's still clearly madly in love with her. She does not reciprocate those feelings, and she keeps him around because she needs him. And, towards the end of the season, there's this amulet that Angel brings her because, you got to have an Angel cameo for the final season and the final episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He offers to come and help her fight with her, and she doesn't want him to come because she doesn't want him to die. And he gives her this amulet, and she gives it to Spike. And pretty much by Spike wearing the amulet, shoots out these beams of light at the feral vampires, like sunlight, and destroys them. But it kills him in the process. And so, there's still that theme of she's using Spike. And there's even one point where she tells him, "I love you." And Spike looks at her and goes, "No, you don't, but thanks for saying it anyways." Even he knows he's being used. And, that part does make me kind of sad. It's probably the thing I like the least about Buffy, the character. I just don't like the use she does to Spike, despite him having done some horrible things to her. It's the one thing in this whole series that really leaves a horrible taste in my mouth as a whole. And I don't think any real resolution, any growth comes out of it. And the last theme I really love in this series finale is just the theme of the first evil having a conscience and a form. And I'm going to give you kind of a Christian perspective on this, but in Christianity, we believe in Adam and Eve and the apple and the snake tempting them and, creating the first sin in the world. And, it's kind of interesting because we always think of like the first evil in Christianity as like the devil tempting people. But imagine if the act itself was like a being and an entity, which is kind of hard to imagine. But, in Buffy, that's what it is. The first evil isn't like the devil. It isn't a person. It's this like spirit, and it's tempting people and hurting people and trying to cause evil in the world. And traditionally, it's always let there be this balance. There has to be so much good to counter so much evil, and it's just saying, F this, it's time for me to take out all the good guys in the whole universe. And it's a really interesting concept, and I think Buffy actually knocked it out of the park in the season of capturing the essence of the first evil. And it does a great job of catching people into its web of lies and manipulating them. You have Caleb. At one point, you have Andrew. Even Spike, be able to manipulate at some point, though he really doesn't understand it. It's not a conscious thing. And it's really neat just to see how far the first evil's influence spreads throughout the series and the seasons, and just the fear it instills in people, especially with the potential slayers. It's pretending to be them sometimes, and then it's like, nope, I killed this person, and look how easy it is for me to infiltrate your house. And it's just evil and manipulative. And I do think it was a fitting big bad to end the series, even though there are some other big bads I like a little bit better. But this was a really terrific villain to end the show on. And with that, we got to give the final season of Buffy some rankings. And my overall ranking for this season is a 3.5 out of 5. I think it's a good one. I don't think it's in that Hall of Fame, firing in all cylinders kind of season, but it's still a really good one. Again, half the season is really good. Half the season, I'm kind of like, whatever, like not that into this. I think it's done well overall. And if it just wasn't for that, it felt like it was dragging at some points, and a lot of characters, you're just kind of like, what are they doing with them? They seem kind of pointless and lost in the season. If it wasn't for that, I do think it'd be in the 4 to 5 range, but that does weigh it down. But again, with that said, the action's really good when it gets going. I love getting some more faith in the series. I love having Spike with a soul. Willow does come back in full form and being a valuable member of the team. And then, of course, getting, more time with Giles, I always do just love. But Xander and Anya, I'm not going to lie, could have done without. I do think this is Dawn at her most annoying, which is saying something. I still will never understand her kicking Buffy out of the house towards the end of the season. I'm sorry, like, WTF. But overall, a really good season if you can get past some of that stuff. And then the overall fun ranking, I also just keep it on par, 3.5 out of 5. Again, high highs, low lows, not a lot of in between. And when it's, riding on a high, ton of fun, Buffy at its best. When it's on a low, man, some of the worst Buffy that I think we've seen. But, I still love revisiting this season. This is not the one I dread revisiting the most. I'm not going to lie, that's season 6, just because it's kind of a depressing season. at least this ends on a really high note. I do wish we got another season into the future. It would be really cool to see what it would be like in future seasons with Buffy running teams of Slayers all over the world. And you get a little bit of glimpse of that in Angel season 5, which is a really good season in the Buffyverse, even though I'm a little critical of some of the Angel series. I do wish we had more Buffy. I don't think we'll ever get a continuation with this cast, just because it's kind of problematic with, you know, the vampires. They've aged, the actors have aged, so I don't know how you would ever really continue the series with these current cast members. And you're not going to do a Buffy season and not bring Spike and Angel back in some capacity. But again, I love this series. I'm a big Buffy fan, and it will always be in my heart as one of my favorite series of all time. And I will do a ranking of what I think are the best Buffy seasons from worst to best next week. So please tune in for that. And with that said, all I know is I'm happy to go to work tomorrow because I don't have to fight an army of feral evil vampires and the first evil. Though on second thought, I might be kind of bored tomorrow, and maybe it would be more fun to be a Slayer. I don't know.